I started noticing it when I couldn't remember deciding anymore. Not big decisions, just the small ones. My hand would already be moving before my brain showed up. Coffee paid for, app confirmed, card tapped. And later, when I'd see the charge, I'd have this half-second pause where I tried to remember the moment it happened. Most days I couldn't. It didn't feel reckless. It felt calm, responsible even. Like I was just moving through my day the way I always did. That's what made it tricky. Nothing felt wrong enough to interrupt. Autopilot felt safe, familiar, efficient. And I trusted it. I trusted routine more than attention. It wasn't that I was spending wildly. It was that I wasn't really there when the spending happened, which meant nobody was watching, especially me. Subscriptions were the first place I realized how quiet this had gotten. Not the obvious ones, the normal ones. $8 here, $13 there. Stuff I'd signed up for during free trials or late nights when $15 felt like pocket change. I told myself it didn't matter because each one was small, under 20, practically nothing. But then one month I counted them. Not dramatically, just out of curiosity. And it was about $147 a month. That's when it felt weird, not scary, just off. Like finding out you've been paying rent to strangers you don't even recognize. I didn't cancel anything right away. That would have meant admitting I didn't need them. Autopilot hates that kind of honesty. It would rather keep paying than have the conversation. Even if the conversation is just with yourself. Food delivery was the one I defended the hardest. Not out loud. Internally. I told myself it was about time, energy, sanity. After a long day, $22 for dinner didn't feel like spending. It felt like relief. I wasn't ordering feasts, just normal meals a couple times a week, sometimes 3. And it stayed invisible because each order felt contained. One receipt, one night. But one afternoon, waiting for food, I did the math. 3 orders a week. About $30 each after fees and tips. That's roughly $90 a week. Call it 48 weeks a year. Over $4,000. The number didn't punch me. It sat there. Heavy. This was the part I didn't want to look at first. Because autopilot feeds on tiredness, and I was tired a lot. Gas stations were another quiet one. I never went in planning to spend money. I went in for gas. The spending just happened. A drink. A snack. Something small because I was already there. $5, $7, $10. It didn't feel like shopping. It felt like punctuation at the end of a task. Fill the tank, grab something, move on. But I noticed it was every time. Same rhythm, same shrug afterward. When I added it up, it wasn't dramatic. Maybe $30 a week. But $30 a week is about $1,500 a year. For snacks, I barely remembered eating. What bothered me wasn't the number. It was how automatic it had become. Like a text I'd agreed to without reading. Autopilot loves habits that don't require thought, especially ones dressed up as routine. Credit cards felt responsible on autopilot. I paid on time, every month, never missed. That was the story I told myself. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't drowning, but the balance never really moved. It hovered, like it was waiting for me to notice it. I made the minimum, sometimes a little more, enough to feel like I was doing something. But one night I looked at how much interest I'd paid over a year. Just interest, not the balance. And it was over $1,000 for nothing. No object, no experience, just time passing. That realization was uncomfortable in a quiet way. Like realizing you've been walking in the wrong direction, but you've been moving the whole time. Autopilot confuses motion with progress, and I let it. Upgrades were sneaky because they felt earned. The bigger size, the better version. The option that was only a little more. $2 here, $5 there. I told myself it was treating myself. And maybe at first it was. But eventually it stopped feeling like a treat and started feeling standard. The upgraded version became the default. And once that happens, the extra cost disappears emotionally, but not financially. I realized I couldn't remember the last time I chose the regular option. Not because I needed the upgrade, just because it was there. Comfortable, familiar. Over a year, those small upgrades added up to hundreds, maybe more. What bothered me wasn't the money. It was that nothing felt special anymore. Autopilot steals contrast. And without contrast, spending just blends into the background. Convenience fees felt official. That's why I never questioned them. Parking apps, Ticket platforms, service charges that looked formal enough to feel non-negotiable, $3, $6, $11. I'd sigh and pay, not angry, just resigned. But one month I counted how many times I'd paid a fee for the privilege of paying. It was over 20 times. Average fee was about $5. That's $100 a month, $1,200 a year, just for convenience. I didn't feel outraged. I felt tired. Tired that I'd accepted it so easily. Autopilot trusts anything that looks like a system. If it feels official, I stop paying attention. And attention is usually the only thing standing between me and a bad deal. Clothes weren't dramatic either. I wasn't shopping for fun. I was replacing things. Or so I told myself. Socks when they felt thin. Shirts when they didn't feel right anymore. Stuff I bought, not because it was broken, but because it was slightly uncomfortable. And discomfort has a price. I noticed how often I reached for my card instead of sitting with that feeling for a day. Over a year, those small replacements added up to a couple $1,000s. And I still felt like I had nothing to wear. That was the strange part. The money went somewhere, but the satisfaction didn't stick. Autopilot hates friction. It will happily pay to smooth things over, even when the friction was trying to tell me something. Eating out with friends was where Autopilot felt the most justified. You don't want to be the weird one. You order what everyone else orders. You split the check evenly. You don't bring up prices. It's easier. And I told myself it was about connection, which was true. Partly. But I never checked in with my bank account before checking in with the table. If dinner was $60, that was just what dinner cost. I didn't feel reckless. I felt normal. But normal, done often enough, becomes expensive. When I added it up, social meals were costing me close to $4,000 a year. The discomfort wasn't regret. It was realizing how often I paid for belonging. Without noticing, that's what I was doing. Phone upgrades were another one I defended with logic. Battery life, camera quality, longevity, all reasonable. But when I looked back, most of my upgrades happened when my old phone was fine. Not great, but fine. The new one felt exciting for a week. Then it became invisible. Spread over payments, it felt cheap. $35 a month. But $35 a month for 3 years is over $1,200. And I'd done it more than once. What sat with me was the realization that I wasn't buying functionality. I was buying relief from the feeling of being behind. Autopilot is very sensitive to that feeling. It will spin quickly to make it go away. Groceries felt responsible, necessary, hard to question. But I noticed how often I bought food for a version of myself that didn't exist. Healthier meals, ambitious recipes, ingredients with good intentions. And then I'd throw half of it away. Over a year, my grocery waste alone probably cost me $1,000, maybe more. That number made me uncomfortable because it wasn't about money. It was about honesty. Autopilot shops optimistically. It assumes future energy, future discipline. And I kept paying for that optimism, even when reality kept disagreeing. Digital purchases were easy to forget because there was nothing to hold. Movies I never watched, games I never played, courses I never opened, $10, $20, $49. I told myself I'd get to them later. Later rarely came. When I totaled those purchases, it was close to $1,500 in a year. For intentions, not actions. That realization felt awkward, like realizing you keep buying gym memberships, but never showing up. Autopilot believes in future motivation more than present patterns, and it charges accordingly. Rent was the biggest Autopilot decision I ever made. Not because it was careless, but because it felt inevitable. This was the neighborhood. This was the price. This was adulthood. I chose comfort over margin without really noticing the trade. A few $100s more a month didn't feel like much at the time. But over a year, that was $4,000. Over 5 years, $20,000. The discomfort came later, when money felt tight and I couldn't explain why. Autopilot likes stability, even when that stability quietly squeezes everything else. Travel spending blurred together the fastest. Meals, upgrades, small conveniences that felt justified because I was already spending. What surprised me was how little I remembered afterward. Thousands of dollars spent, and only a few moments stuck. The emotional weight wasn't regret, it was confusion. I thought spending more would mean remembering more. It didn't. Autopilot chases the idea of experience without checking the return. And memory doesn't itemize receipts. Insurance and memberships were the most invisible. I paid monthly for peace of mind I never reviewed. Car coverage, warranties, random protections I couldn't explain if asked. It felt responsible to have them. Adult. But when I finally looked, some of them overlapped. Some I didn't need anymore. I was spending over $200 a month just to not think about risk. That realization was uncomfortable. Peace of mind shouldn't require ignorance. Autopilot prefers silence to clarity, and silence isn't always calm. I noticed how often I borrowed language to defend my habits. It's not that bad. Everyone does it. It's normal. Those phrases came out easily. Automatically, when I slowed down, I realized I didn't even believe them anymore. They were just familiar, comfortable excuses. Hearing my own voice repeat them felt embarrassing in a soft way. Autopilot doesn't invent reasons. It recycles them. And sometimes you outgrow the reasons before you outgrow the habit. Time-based spending felt noble. Paying to save minutes, delivery, express options, shortcuts. But when I looked at how I used that saved time, it wasn't meaningful. I scrolled, I drifted, I worried. I was buying speed without direction. Over a year, I spent thousands to save hours I didn't value. That realization sat heavy. Autopilot mistakes motion for purpose, and money moves very easily when purpose is unclear. The scariest part was realizing I only noticed all this when things felt tight. Autopilot hides best when there's margin. When money feels okay, leaks don't matter. When it doesn't, they show up all at once. I wondered how many I still wasn't seeing. That thought didn't panic me. It lingered. Autopilot doesn't disappear because you noticed it once. It just gets quieter. And quieter things are harder to catch. One afternoon, I added everything up. Not dramatically, just coffee, calculator, mild dread, subscriptions, food, fees, upgrades. The total wasn't shocking. It was heavy. Because it wasn't one bad decision. It was hundreds of small ones I never remembered making. That was the uncomfortable part. Autopilot thrives in silence. Numbers break that silence. And once it's broken, you can't unhear it. Now, it's usually a normal evening when it hits me. Sitting somewhere familiar, phone in hand, about to tap. Sometimes I still do. Sometimes I pause. Awareness doesn't feel good, but it feels lighter than not knowing. Nothing is fixed. Nothing is solved. I just notice more. Autopilot never announces itself, but attention does, and I'm still getting used to the sound of it.